Marcus Williams stood silently by the front door, a small suitcase in his hand and weariness heavy in his eyes, not from age, but from heartbreak. Across the marble floor of the grand Beverly Hills living room, Jessica screamed at him like a stranger. "You're not my real father. You were just a favor my parents did out of pity." The words hit like shards of glass, sharp, sudden, and cutting through the decades of memories they shared. She was no longer the little girl who clung to his hand on her first day of school, the child who couldn't sleep without his lullabies. No, that little girl was gone. In her place stood a woman sculpted by status, appearances, and cold ambition. Marcus had always known that his place in Jessica's world was fragile. He had felt it slipping away ever since Bradley Montenegro entered her life, the polished heir to a construction empire with more arrogance than empathy. Bradley never hid his contempt. He didn't need to. The way he stared at Marcus, the way he smirked whenever Jessica introduced him not as her father, but simply as Marcus, the man who helped raise me. That alone spoke volumes. Still, nothing could have prepared Marcus for this moment. "I'm 28 years old, a successful lawyer. I have this beautiful house and a rich fiancé. I don't need you dragging me down anymore." She said it as if love had an expiration date, as if sacrifice had a statute of limitations. The house Marcus had helped pay for, brick by emotional brick. The garden he planted so she could play in the sun. The education he had worked 3 jobs to afford, driving, cleaning, guarding events at night, just to buy her school books and prom dresses. Every memory was now being discarded like yesterday's mail. Bradley sat casually in a leather armchair, sipping wine and tapping his fingers on the armrest, clearly enjoying the show. "Finally, love," he murmured without even glancing at Marcus. "It's about time." The air was heavy with unspoken truths. Jessica could no longer hide her shame, nor her eagerness to erase him from the story of her life. At parties, she stopped introducing him. At dinners, his invitation never came. The photos of her childhood once displayed on the hallway shelf had been tucked away, replaced by tennis trophies and designer decor. He had become invisible in the home he helped build. "Do you know what my friends at the firm say when they hear you still live here?" she hissed, her voice laced with anger. "They say it's weird, a respected lawyer sharing a house with someone like you." Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't need her to finish the sentence. He knew what she meant. He had known for a long time. But Bradley said it plainly. "With someone who clearly isn't part of our social circle." The sentence sat in the room like a verdict, and Marcus felt every syllable land on the years of his silent devotion. He wasn't angry, he was numb, standing at the end of a love he had poured himself into without asking for anything in return. A lifetime of sacrifice reduced to a liability in their glittering world. Jessica pointed to the door. "Take your things and get out of my sight. I never want to see you again. And take those ridiculous childhood photos, too. They don't match the decor." He turned slowly to look at the wall where only 3 photos remained, hidden behind her trophies, out of sight. The rest had disappeared, erased like his role in her life. He adjusted the strap on his old leather briefcase. His voice, calm and gentle, carried a weight heavier than any accusation. "It's okay, Jessica." She didn't hear the sadness under his serenity. She didn't see the truth behind his tired eyes. And she certainly didn't realize what she had just thrown away. Not yet. The streets of Beverly Hills blurred past the windshield as Marcus drove his aging pickup truck, the same one he had used to take Jessica to school for over a decade. The same truck she now refused to be seen near. The city looked polished as ever, neatly trimmed hedges, designer storefronts, luxury cars gliding past without a second glance at the man gripping the steering wheel. But for Marcus, it had never looked emptier. His phone buzzed again. "Marcus," Jessica's voice crackled through, cold and transactional. "I forgot to tell you, you need to clear out the garage too. Bradley's converting it into a private gym." The garage. The one Marcus had built with his own hands, brick by brick, over weekends when others rested. A gift for her future. Now being sanitized out of her life like a blemish on her curated reality. "And another thing," she continued, voice clipped. "Please don't come to my office anymore. The partners have commented. It's just uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. That's what he was now. Not the man who tucked her in every night. Not the one who sold his wedding ring to pay for her first computer. Just a discomfort. I understand, he said simply. She hung up without a goodbye. Later that evening, Marcus sat in a modest corner cafe far from the grandeur of Beverly Hills. The air smelled of old wood, burnt coffee, and honesty, an aroma he hadn't felt in years. Robert Chun walked in, his face lighting up at the sight of his old friend. Marcus, man. I haven't seen you in forever. How's Jessica? I hear she's a big-time lawyer now. Marcus managed a faint smile. Yeah, that's actually what I came to talk about. He recounted everything, how he was thrown out, the look in Jessica's eyes, Bradley's smirk, the pictures taken off the wall like he never existed. Robert listened in silence, his expression darkening with each detail. I remember, Robert finally said, shaking his head. You sold your lunch just to buy her school supplies. You worked 3 shifts and still helped her study in the middle of the night. And now this. Marcus stirred his coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl into blackness. She doesn't remember any of it, he muttered. Or she pretends not to, Robert replied. This ain't just about shame, Marcus. This is about money. That fiancé of hers. He saw you as a roadblock to her inheritance. He probably filled her head with ideas. Marcus nodded. He's asked her questions. About estate planning. About whether I have anything left to pass on. He paused, leaned back, and for the first time that day, allowed a small smile to rise. They think I have nothing. Robert looked up. Marcus pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. On it, an investment account balance glowing in bright white numbers. Robert squinted, then sat bolt upright. $5.5 million, he whispered. Marcus nodded calmly. The tech company I invested in. Remember the settlement I got from my brother's accident? I put most of it there. Sat on it for 15 years. Grew over 1,200%. Robert stared, half in awe, half in disbelief. I never told Jessica, Marcus said, voice steady. Because I needed to know if she loved me for who I am, not what I have. The silence that followed was thick with everything Jessica would never know. Every night Marcus skipped dinner to save a few extra dollars, every opportunity he passed up so she could chase hers, every moment he sacrificed to raise a child who was never his by blood, but always his by heart. And now? Robert finally asked. Marcus exhaled long and slow, as if releasing years of quiet restraint. Now, he said, I give them exactly what they asked for. I walk out of Jessica's life completely. No drama. No explanations. Robert raised an eyebrow. That's it. No, Marcus replied. That's just the beginning. He reached for a napkin, pulled out a pen, and scribbled down a name and number. Call this man tomorrow, Marcus instructed. Don't mention my name. Just say you have a client looking to make serious investments in the area. Robert looked at the napkin. The name on it made his eyes widen. Harrison and Associates, he whispered. That's one of the most exclusive financial firms in the city. Marcus simply nodded, eyes clear and purposeful now. Jessica wanted me gone from her life. She's going to get her wish. But the Marcus Williams she erased. He was only half the story. There was no malice in his tone. Just quiet resolve. Every humiliation had become a spark. Every dismissal a push forward. And now, beneath that calm surface, Marcus was gathering everything they had discarded, his dignity, his purpose, his power, and turning it into something they couldn't even imagine. The man they had underestimated was about to remind the world that true value can never be measured by appearances, but by legacy. Jessica's voice on the phone was curt, rehearsed. Marcus, I need you to sign some legal documents. It's about the house. Marcus, sitting at a small desk in a downtown motel, glanced at the neat folders in front of him. Investment statements, real estate research, charitable grant drafts. He already knew what this was about. What kind of documents? He asked, though the answer was already clear. There's a legal complication, she replied. Bradley's lawyer says since you lived in the house for more than 2 years, you might have a partial claim. We need a formal waiver, just a signature. Nothing complicated. Marcus could almost hear Bradley in the background, coaching her, calculating everything down to the last square foot of ownership. Where do I sign? He asked. At the lawyer's office. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock sharp. Please don't be late. We have a dinner afterward. She hung up before he could answer. That night, Marcus walked into the glass and marble headquarters of Harrison and Associates. The contrast between this sleek world and the cold rejection he had experienced just days earlier did not escape him. Here, he was not a nobody. He was Mr. Williams, an investor with a $5.5 million portfolio and a vision. Jonathan Harrison greeted him personally, the firm's director, in a $3,000 suit and an eager handshake. Mr. Williams, what an honor. Your investments in value tech were truly visionary. Marcus responded with a polite nod. I was lucky to get in early. Now I want to diversify into something that matters. Harrison leaned in. What do you have in mind? Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. Community centers. Scholarships. Mentorship programs. Places where kids like I once was, like Jessica once was, can be seen, heard, and helped. Harrison was surprised, but he nodded respectfully. There are emerging opportunities in Beverly Hills. Real estate with public outreach potential. Perfect, Marcus said, without explaining further. A plan had begun to take shape, not one driven by revenge, but by something deeper, legacy. He wasn't going to destroy Jessica's world. He was going to build his own. And then came the gala. The Beverly Hills Country Club was unrecognizable that night, draped in golden lights, floral arches, and velvet carpets. Guests in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos arrived in convoys of luxury vehicles, photographers clicking frantically. Rumor swirled about the mysterious host, a millionaire investor, new to town, passionate about social impact. Jessica arrived on Bradley's arm, radiant in a glittering $8,000 dress, unaware of the trap she had walked into. She mingled confidently, whispering to colleagues that she had finally severed the last tie with her past and could now focus on their upcoming $300,000 wedding. Appearances, she believed, had finally aligned with ambition. Across the room, Marcus watched calmly from a quiet corner. The air was thick with money and performance. None of them saw him, not yet. Until the lights dimmed. A spotlight swept across the room and the host was introduced. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a man whose commitment to this city and its youth is about to change lives, Mr. Marcus Williams. Gasps spread like wildfire. Jessica froze mid-sentence. Her champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. Bradley, for the first time in public, lost his polished composure. Marcus stepped onto the stage in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, no longer the quiet driver or the invisible father figure, but a man who held the room in the palm of his hand. Good evening, he began, his voice calm, but with a gravity that pulled every eye to him. Tonight isn't about wealth. It's about something far rarer: character, integrity, gratitude. He paused. For 23 years, I raised a young woman as if she were my own. I gave her everything I had, my time, my money, my love. Last week, I was thrown out of my own home because my presence no longer matched the image she wanted to present. Murmurs. Silence. Shifting eyes. The truth was seeping into the polished walls of privilege. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. These scholarships, he continued, will grant $200,000 a year to underprivileged youth, so that no one's worth is measured by the color of their skin, their bank account, or their accent. The audience applauded slowly, unsure at first, then with growing conviction. Marcus wasn't just exposing injustice, he was offering hope. Jessica stood motionless. Each word felt like an earthquake under her heels. Bradley tried to recover. Marcus. What a generous gesture, he said, approaching the stage with a rehearsed smile. Let's talk about. Marcus didn't flinch. All these years, while you judged me, I was building something you couldn't even imagine. That $5.5 million I'm donating? It came from every sacrifice you ridiculed. Gasps. Jessica's face drained of color. Bradley's eyes darted. He was calculating, too late, that the man he had dismissed as a burden had been the real power all along. But Marcus wasn't finished. And to those who mistook kindness for weakness, thank you. Because every act of contempt became the fire that built this legacy. A final silence fell. The applause that followed was not just for wealth, it was for truth. For dignity reclaimed. Marcus stepped off the stage, no longer the man they once overlooked, but the man they would never forget. 3 months had passed since the gala, but its echoes still haunted the city's most refined social circles. For Jessica Whitmore, the night that was meant to crown her ascent became a silent, slow-motion collapse. It began with whispers. The partners at her law firm, once proud to showcase her polished resume and affluent fiancé, grew distant. Clients began pulling back. Her name, once associated with prestige, had become entangled with public embarrassment. Though Marcus had never named her directly, everyone connected the dots. The girl who cast out her adoptive father for not fitting into her glass-walled life had done so just before he donated millions to help underprivileged youth. In a single evening, she had become the face of cold ingratitude. Then came the consequences. Jessica was asked, gently at first, then formally, to take a leave of absence. The firm needed to protect its image, they explained. The damage from the gala was regrettable, they said, but unavoidable. A few days later, Bradley was fired from his father's construction company. The Montenegro family, known for calculating their social alliances with surgical precision, saw him as a liability. His engagement to Jessica was quietly dissolved, no statement issued. Just silence. Cold. Final. Reputational silence. For the first time in years, Jessica found herself truly alone. She moved out of the house, the one Marcus helped pay for, when she could no longer afford the upkeep. Her savings dwindled faster than she expected. Reputation, she realized, wasn't a currency that lasted long when there was no goodwill to support it. And goodwill, she had burned to ashes. It was in a small, unremarkable cafe in downtown Los Angeles that Jessica sat one afternoon, fingers trembling around a chipped porcelain mug. No designer clothes. No chauffeur. Just her, and a crumpled flyer she had seen on a community board. Foundation for Youth Empowerment, hiring administrative assistants. The name at the bottom hit her like a wave, Marcus Williams, founder. She hadn't spoken to him since the gala. Couldn't. Shame was heavier than grief. But now, in this place of quiet desperation, the weight of her pride began to crumble. The next morning, she stood outside the foundation's modest but bright office building. The sign over the door read, "Transforming Lives Through Education." Inside, the receptionist recognized her, nodded gently, and led her to a simple room. Marcus was already there, standing by the window, watching the street below. He turned slowly. Their eyes met, not as father and daughter, not as benefactor and castaway, but as two human beings bearing the wreckage of a relationship broken by years of misunderstanding. Jessica opened her mouth but nothing came out. Her voice had carried through courtrooms and conference halls, but not here. "I'd like to apply," she whispered finally. "No special privileges. No shortcuts. I need to start over." Marcus studied her face. There was no makeup, no pretense, no polished mask. Just rawness. Regret. And something new, sincerity. "You'll start as an administrative assistant," he said. "Organizing documents. Learning the scholarship system. Answering calls. It's not glamorous." "I understand," she replied, barely holding back tears. "And one condition," he added. "You'll work directly with the youth. You'll hear their stories. You'll understand what it means to fight for a future. To be told they're not enough. You'll see what it's like to rise from nothing, like I did. Like you once did, before you forgot." Jessica nodded, her voice too fragile to trust. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a door. A narrow, fragile door that she never imagined she would be allowed to knock on again. As the weeks passed, the world she once rejected opened itself to her again, but in a different form. It came not through galas or power lunches, but through after-school tutoring sessions, food drives, late-night grant writing. Through conversations with teens who saw a future for the first time, not because of their pedigree, but because someone believed in them. One afternoon, Robert Chun, now the Foundation's executive director, passed by Marcus's office and looked down at Jessica arranging chairs for a youth mentorship meeting. "She's changing," Robert said quietly. "Maybe for the first time, she's finally learning what you spent a lifetime trying to teach her." Marcus didn't respond. He just watched her in silence, not with pride, not with resentment, but with cautious hope. Because what Jessica had lost in money, status, and reputation was real. But what she might be rediscovering, dignity, purpose, humanity, was worth far more. 2 years later, the cityscape shimmered under the afternoon sun as Marcus stood by the tall glass windows of his new office on the 23rd floor of a downtown building. Below him, Los Angeles pulsed with life, imperfect, beautiful, and constantly becoming. The plaque outside his door read, "Foundation for Youth Empowerment, Marcus Williams, founder and president." He was not the same man who had stood in the doorway of his old home with a suitcase and a quiet heartbreak. He was more, because pain had refined him, not ruined him. And perhaps more importantly, he now knew that his family extended beyond blood or even adoption. His family was made up of the hundreds, soon thousands, of lives he had chosen to believe in. Letters lined his desk. Handwritten thank you notes from scholarship students across the country. Stories of kids who, because of a man they'd never met, were going to college, breaking cycles, and seeing possibilities that once seemed impossible. Marcus ran a hand over the stack of envelopes gently, not with pride, but with deep gratitude. The phone rang. Robert's voice came through, laced with a quiet excitement. "Marcus, we just received 50 new scholarship applications. Schools are finally recognizing the Foundation as a partner. Jessica's team just finished the last round of evaluations." Marcus didn't speak right away. He simply nodded, even though no one could see him. The name still carried weight, but the sting had faded. It was no longer coated in pain, it was grounded in the hope of change. That afternoon, Jessica sat in a small, sunlit office across the hallway. Her desk was scattered with folders, handwritten notes from students she now mentored, and a worn planner filled with meetings, not galas, not fundraisers, but real appointments with real lives. She had traded marble floors for tiled corridors, and for the first time in years, she felt herself breathe deeply and without shame. Her salary was modest. Her apartment was small. But her heart, for the first time, felt full. Marcus watched her from the doorway. She hadn't seen him, her head bent over a letter she was editing with care. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. Watching her give herself to something greater than status was enough. Robert walked up beside him, arms crossed, watching the same scene. "She's not the same woman who kicked you out," he said quietly. "She's learning. Slowly. But she's learning." Marcus nodded. "I never wanted to destroy her," he murmured. "I just needed her to see." And she had. Bradley Montenegro, on the other hand, never recovered. Rejected by his family, left out of every serious business conversation, his reputation crumbled under the weight of arrogance and short-sighted greed. He became a cautionary tale in whispered conversations across the city, a reminder of how quickly the world turns on those who judge by appearances and power. Jessica, meanwhile, rebuilt, not her status, but herself. She became a mentor, a listener, a believer in second chances, because she had been given one. She no longer introduced Marcus as anything less than my father, the man who taught me how to stand up, even when I fell down. And Marcus. He continued to build, not homes, but hope. Not dreams of grandeur, but platforms for others to rise. One fall morning, he stood on stage at Harvard University, invited to speak before 500 students on overcoming adversity and building social justice. Dressed in a simple black suit, he didn't speak with grandeur. He spoke like a man who had lived every word. "I learned that the best revenge," he said, his voice calm and clear, "is not to make others suffer. It's to live so fully, so meaningfully, that the people who tried to diminish you become irrelevant to your peace." A silence held the room. Then, thunderous applause. But Marcus knew the real victory wasn't in the standing ovation, or even in the millions his foundation had given. The real victory was watching Jessica come home, not to a place, but to herself. To humility. To grace. To gratitude. And perhaps most of all, to love. He had once been rejected by the daughter he raised. But in the process, he discovered that love, when given freely and without expectation, never truly disappears. It transforms. It waits. And sometimes, it even returns, not as it was, but as something stronger. He had built a legacy not from power, but from pain. Not from wealth, but from wisdom. And in the quiet of that realization, Marcus Williams finally understood. The greatest measure of a life is not in how many remember your name, but in how many lives are better because you existed.